Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Search, Deploy, Commit. I'm your host, Jack, and I'm here with Coen, Cartographer of Space and Lands in Warzone. Coen, thank you so much for being on the podcast with us today.
Thank you very much for having me, and hello to everybody, to the listeners.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you on and talk about what you're doing in the community, like many others, but in your own unique way. I did want to start with a off-subject question. This is something I've been doing more recently with some of the the interviews, is starting something completely off topic just to break the ice.
Okay.
Would you say Mordheim or Kill Team is better?
Mordheim.
All right, and why?
Okay, I'm okay. I'm old. I'm 34, and I played it when I was young. So I would actually say Space Hulk before all of that. But it's in my heart. And also, I'm making a map set in Warhammer Fantasy. So
yeah, I saw that,
like
and I was like, oh, he's got a Mordheim map that he's working on and doing all these things for.
No. I want to say that my first map, which is not published, but it's actually publishable, was Mordheim.
Wow.
So I have it.
I love it.
So
that was your first map?
Yes, when I wanted to see if I could make a map, I simply used a map of Mordheim and tried to with Inkscape, which I didn't know how to use, and also to see how the Warzone editor worked, and that was it. So I have a Mordheim map. I don't like that. It's just I simply took an image and used Inkscape to simply transform it from a PNG, an image, into a vector, because Inkscape works on vector maps, SVGs.
Right.
It's just a port. I didn't do anything. I simply created a little box with the numbers and the territories, and that's all.
Nice.
It's unplayable, I think, because I have it. So the question was perfect for me.
Well, I had to ask because I saw that in your postings, which we'll get into your server in a little bit, but really trying to learn, and I always ask everybody, what was it that got you started in Warzone? What did you start playing, or how did you get going inside the game?
Well, it might be fun for a lot of people because it's probably odd, but a lot of girls, friends of mine, during COVID, sent me the link to join the game. And so actually I was in a group of women, and I was the only man, and I started playing with them. And obviously, since Warzone is actually a game for males generally, I am the only one that remained on.
That's awesome. So you're the only one that stuck around from your original group, is what it sounds
Yeah, no,
like.
well, my original group, I have a friend of mine who simply stopped playing during these days, so she remained for a couple of years, I think, now.
Wow.
So, but it's...
Awesome. What was it initially that you guys started playing? Was it just a regular multiplayer map, and they just say, hey, come play the game and check this out?
Actually, I played what I call a competitive game. I'm part of the Hawks, the Nestlings, which is the lower tier of the Hawks clan. And so I started not how I really ended up doing, because actually my maps tend to be role-playing maps.
Okay.
I do a lot of stuff which is role-play related, but actually at the core, my beginning was as a competitive player. I don't know if it's the correct way to explain that. It means tournaments, small
Sure.
maps, that kind of stuff. Yeah, not deep
Gotcha.
blues.
Okay, so I see what you're saying. So you started doing role playing shortly after you got into multiplayer. Is that right?
Not that shortly. I think 6 months after. I don't know if it's a long time or not.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm still doing that.
Nice. Yeah, because you're a part of the Nestlings group, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Right on. Yeah, and obviously that's you're a very competitive clan, and I think that's really
Yeah,
cool
I
to
think
stay
they
on top of
tolerate
the game.
me.
I mean, I'm sure your expertise in, all these other avenues are probably helpful as well. The one thing I wanted to sort of ask then, as you transition from more of a multiplayer to role-playing style games, maybe give an overview for people that haven't played a role-playing Warzone game before. Kind of set the scene for them.
Yes. Okay. I am part of also another group, which is the Immersive System, which is actually an RP game, the immersive part, but with it's a very complex set of rules, which is a sort of hybrid between Diplos and RP. And also, I participated and helped guys from the Game of Thrones setting, which I mean, I think in Warzone, the Game of Thrones theme is the most appreciated. And also, for example, part of this group is Coen. It's another Coen, which is the man that really makes good maps, not like myself. Uh, you probably know him from the Westeros map, which is, I think,
Okay.
the most appreciated one in the community. And so the RP games means really a lot of writing on the part of each player. And so the strategy part remains. It's very important, but you tend to describe the events that you have to think about, that you are handling a nation with a set of characters, and those characters come to life and operate on the map. So the point is to go one step further, and that's also the reason why I helped Yamada Sargata in making the character packs mod, because the idea and the goal was to see characters. Mm, I don't know, tiny figures on your map with a name.
Yeah.
And those guys are your guys, and you actually make and trying to let them interact with each other and the other players. And in time, I've seen that the narrative takes shape, and you start to see the world take life. And I don't know, I kind of like that, because the politics of it then. Also, it's never a toxic environment. It's very interesting, but you start to uh, immerse yourself in another context. It's actually fun, very fun. It's also not that heavy on your time. So, and the most interesting part of it is that you interact with other people, and that uh, tends to surprise you every time, because every personality comes to life, and also each one of the player is actually doing a lot of different parts, and so the dynamic is usually very, very interesting. That's
I
pretty much the RP, the role play of, and it's so all through the chat, and also all these mods that are coming to life in this last year, which help really a lot with that.
Yeah, and I think I got into some really advanced role-playing games, specifically around Westeros and
Yeah.
that overall genre, and it really surprised me at how in-depth it was, and it was a little bit beyond my capability, but I guess if there's somebody out there, I think, there's obviously a community of people that are doing role-playing games. What what would you say to somebody that's maybe looking at joining a role-playing game, but is maybe uh, hesitant, unsure about joining a game like that? How would you
Well,
encourage them to get started?
actually, you said it yourself. The fear that people has is that the role play is beyond their capabilities, and that's not really a problem. Also, because people are actually encouraging you. It's not a. The point is that you have Warzone, which is very light. If you consider that is just a map, you have map with numbers and chat, and that chat in Diplos has shown how toxic they can be. And the role play is the opposite because the goal of the other players is not winning, it's not beating you, it's actually interacting with you. And so you get encouraged. So really, the point is do not fear you're not capable because even the simplest role play is actually very, how can I say, stimulating for the others because the others uh, take from your imagination. And so you can see that if at the start you tend to be very limited, you can say, in what you write and what you think, the others will always give you a hint that you can follow. And even the simplest thing that you can do is never wrong because it's another hint for the other players. And also that's also great because in Warzone you have a public chat and a private chat. And so what I encourage people at the start is just to work in the private chat, where you can also discuss with other players and get help. And so it's actually quite fun, I think, because in general there are not really. It's a positive environment, and yeah, it's in general it's fun because you will surprise yourself because you will find yourself in a position you didn't expect. Oh, come on! I just started with a few words, and then you wrote pages and pages of stuff. And actually, there is no limit on the other side. You can actually write 100 pages. It's
Wow.
not a problem. That people will only be happy about that.
I think that's a good
So.
explanation. I think that helps, kind of break down and maybe help some people just better understand, what they're getting into, right? I think some people maybe have some preconceived notions of what
Yeah,
they're
absolutely.
expected to do, what they are, um, required to do in those circumstances. So I think that's really good. And I have to say that initially I really wanted to interview you because of the Star Wars map that you created. And what's crazy about this is that since and we've been trying to get together for a very long time now, uh,
Yeah.
since we did that, you have completely upgraded it, and now your Star Wars map has so much more focused around these bonuses and so much Star Wars lore. I'm kind of shocked. I thought it was huge before, and now it's just you've got everything. And I had to ask, with all of this Star Wars lore, what part of the Star Wars universe really stands out to you out of all of the things that you've added to this map?
Okay, I want to say one thing. Mm, Yeah, I did all the work, but I was helped. I was encouraged by
Mm.
the immersive system community. Personally, I'm an old school Star Wars fan, which means that for me the best is always the first trilogy. And also, I was one that enjoyed the what was called the Star Wars Galaxy um, set of setting, which was the what happened before Disney, and Disney actually killed killed it off. And so I actually knew the old lore, and I used that because I had books and also comics and stuff like that of Star Wars.
Sure.
And what I did is actually fuse the old with the new onto the map. But I noticed that a lot of people really appreciated, for example, the Clone Wars and other stuff, and so I incorporated that into the map. Um, and that I did all the work and the research, so no other people is responsible for the mess that the map is. But
I don't
the
know if I
map,
would go so far to call it a mess. I mean, there's so
well,
much information, and you could really go exploring the entire universe. And honestly, I mean, and maybe I'm not a big enough Star Wars fan, but I don't know if you're going to find a map that's quite this connected and even maybe playable in a Star Wars game or,
yeah,
if you think about
I
lore in
actually
general connecting it, right? This is
the the
complete.
the common criticism is that that map is unplayable, actually.
Well,
Yeah,
my guess is that this is more focused around a role playing experience, right? Kind of like you were talking about before.
yes, I must say that I made the map before really delving into the roleplay community of Warzone, which is kind of fun as a concept. But yes, the objective was that you could use the map uh, as you wanted, and actually had a lot of different scenarios. I think I had to add a few distributions just to explain that, because my idea was to give the player the possibility to play a normal rebels against the Empire or clones against the droids, but at the same time I added a private element, so you have the mega corporations, you have the criminals, you have the huts. All this kind of stuff was just not to be used at the same moment. You could just use it in a smaller kind of game. The idea was that my problem probably is making maps that actually are meant not to be used in the moment, but by people who makes scenarios, which
Hmm.
are and these hosts usually retransform maps. And so, yes, the map is unplayable as it is. If you want to make a game which is role play, but also a strategical one, you need to make a scenario and add stuff on your own. And that's probably the what's making its use very limited by the players.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, and I think you're right though, right? Warzone is made and set up to allow players to take a map like this and make it into something that it's not just by itself, right?
yeah,
I think it
exactly.
gives those game creators another avenue and a tool to say, well, I'm just going to block off this section and we're just going to control
Exactly.
everything here. And
Yeah,
there's plenty of
actually,
people that do that.
a huge part of my, how can I say, my Weltanschauung, my vision is that
Mm,
people should block a lot of parts of my maps,
mm.
simply because the objective is to use a piece of it. Because I always hope to give replayability to
Yeah.
players.
And
Um, Also because I think the biggest maps in Warzone are usually sandbox, really, as a concept. Mine is more driven, you can say.
Right. And I was, kind of looking through, obviously this map, you updated a significant amount, on this in comparison to even just the previous versions that you had uploaded. And I know that you had put together a petition for Fizzer to increase the map size. Maybe talk to us a little bit about how that went and what your thoughts are around it.
Well, actually, my request was not made for me. I know I tend to exaggerate. So, in general, probably with me would be that I will reach the limit of 4 megabytes and hope for another raise. But it wasn't about me because the issue is that since I published the Star Wars map, a lot of people a lot of friends came to me asking for advice and encouragement because I think that every player in Warzone is well, a person who loves maps in general. It's we all share this passion at the core. We are the ones that go to see an history book just to see the maps on it. And so a lot of these people really dream of making their own maps, but they are afraid because they think it's overly complicated. And since they knew that I wasn't, first of all, an artist or something like that, because I'm not, I hope to be a bit artistic, but I am very limited. And yet, I achieved that. And so people ask me, oh, can I do that? How can I do? And in general, uh, having spent a lot of time talking to mappers, I discovered that there are a lot of unpublished maps, which are beautiful maps, really something stunning maps, which are not being published because the mappers simply stop working on them because they reach the limit and they don't know how to eliminate stuff to go under the 3 megabytes limit. And so my request to Fizzer was not, you should raise to 4 megabytes for everybody because 3 megabytes is too low. It wasn't that wasn't my spit. My hope was that if it was possible to raise it, it should, because there are a lot of maps that would be published, I think, in the moment. And secondly, if it wasn't possible, my hope was, hear this out, Fizz. Can you make a day during the year where people will show you their maps that maybe are 3 megabytes, 0.1? They don't know what to do. They just show them to you, and then you can help them out in some way, even bypassing the limit for once. That was my hope, because I think that Warzone, and thus Fizzer himself, will benefit from them. And simply because there is a lot of creativity which needs to be witnessed by people and even used by people. That was simply my goal.
Yeah.
It wasn't really a complaint about the limit itself. I think it's necessary in general, the limit.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people need to permanently be able to pull it up on their phones.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
But I can understand where you're coming from as well, and it's great. So as of time of recording, this maybe hasn't been addressed, but hopefully, I was going to ask, if Fizzer was listening, what would you say? But you filled in the gap there pretty well.
Yeah. Because I had, when I wrote that, I had in mind what would he say in response, because I understand that the practical reason for that limit in general, and also I know how easy it's to reach that limit, since my maps are heavily are heavy and are heavily written of art, artworks, and actually useless stuff, which simply occupies a lot of space.
Right.
Hmm.
Well, I mean, I was curious then, kind of going from that, and you mentioned already that, you've been working with a community to, put this together, and I joined your VEMB Discord server, but I was really
Yes.
curious, where did the name come from? Please tell me a little bit
No,
about the title.
no, okay. I have a server which is what I call it's actually not my copyright about that, but it's a back room kind of server.
Okay.
It means that you don't go there to discuss or something like that. It all started from an RP game where I was setting with a friend of mine the VMV, which was a kind of bank. But for example, the Gift Gold Ultra mod was made pretty much for the same reason. So as a community, the immersive system had an RP game, and that game I was a bank, and so we discussed, and we thought that the gold could be used in Warzone to make it, I don't know, to simulate an economy in some way. And so it all started as the server for that bank, but it simply went from that to everything, because I had people that played the mystery games made by Legend, which are brilliant games, RP games, where the host, NW Legend, created mysteries. So you had every player had a different objective and some secrets he had to keep. It's all set in the Game of Thrones, and so universe, and so you had to, in some way, misbehave and plot against the other players in a very fun way, of course. And so I had that. I made all the artwork for the character packs mods, and I want to say that there are 16 character packs.
Wow.
Which are unpublished because Fitzer decided not to let them be publishable because he doesn't want to have players adding 16 packs in the same game.
Ah, I see.
And so we just have, I think, 3 of them. But we have 16 packs. You can understand that.
Yeah, right.
And we are using them privately, you can say, as a community in the immersive system. So I actually made, I think, 80 drawings.
80 drawings?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think maybe 100 now. And so there's a lot of stuff. And that's my server, but simply people who comes in are just joining a very specific thing to this. It's considered that it's the collection of all the private discussion I was having with other people, and so that doesn't really count. The fun fact is that there are a lot of upcoming maps I am making, and that I will probably finish in the next millennium. But
well, we hope sooner than that.
I hope so too. No, actually, I'm going to publish one at least in a month, which is another huge map.
Oh, wow.
And also, it will be yeah, the point is I try to make projects that involve people. This one actually kind of failed because it all started from another RP series of game, a legacy game, which means a game that finishes at a certain point and then makes a new game that starts collecting, I can say, the outcome of the previous one. So there is always an evolution. And so we decided to make a new map to simulate this evolution. And so the new map, in theory, had the idea that all the people had to shape their own countries. And so I should have made a map so that each player had their little, how can I say, their little country made as they wanted.
Wow.
Yes, the issue is that half of the players do not play Warzone anymore. So
Yeah, that's the hard
that
part
was
about
that.
legacy games in general. I'm a huge board gamer, and I've
Yeah.
made it through a couple games. But I'm a huge legacy board game fan. I would love to get your opinion on games like King's Dilemma and Oath. But I'm sure that something like that inside of Warzone is amazing. I think that's a really cool idea. But you're right; it's hard to keep players engaged. Probably even in just a regular role-playing game. Have you found that creating a community around the server, or using Discord to help bring
No, yeah,
together?
you are right because there's always I think the real problem is that it's not like it might be strange to say, but there are two kinds of problems with the involvement of people in the role play. One is that real life usually sucks and doesn't let you have the time to be involved as you want to be. Because I can understand when you make a board game night, we can say, or a board game weekend with your friends,
Sure.
you have chosen to stay there and play the game for that set of hours. Warzone is on your phone, and so it actually follows you in some way. But at the same time, you never have a set amount of time to dedicate yourself to that game. And so a lot of people want to be part of the roleplay, but in the end, they don't have the time, but they are part of the game. And so sometimes the real issue with that is that turns take a lot of days, usually a week. And that's, for some people, it's bad because they lose interest, or at the same time, it's a long of waiting. And so that can be really heavy on somebody. At the same time, there's also a problem of being too much involved, and that means that you become so enamored of your characters, you're so in love with your characters that you actually kind of feel their loss, because roleplay is much more about suffering a loss rather than winning. It's I think the opposite of regular war play in Warzone, because you had to accept that there are other people around you. Usually in role play games, you cannot lose, because even if you lose, meaning your characters get killed or
Right.
you get conquered, usually
Yeah.
you can respawn as a new character. The problem is that you are so in love with your characters that seeing them lose really affects you. And so sometimes you kind of feel, with all the waiting and what happens in the world, you kind of you are affected yourself. It's not my case, but I've seen that. And so people get depressed because they've lost.
Yeah, right.
But that's, I think, and why it's heavy on people, because Warzone follows you. And so it's not just, okay, I have 2 days, I've lost, okay, I move on. No, you still have that game on.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason. This involvement, I think it's a good thing, because you leave it in some way.
Right. I think what's great about Warzone is that it can give you a small portal to a place where you can either play multiplayer, you can do a role-playing game, and it can be in a legacy format even to some degree, turn over turn. Some people don't have time to get together in general to play a game. And so being able to have this format is a big part of what I think makes Warzone so easy to come back to. So, and just, listening to you talk, Coen, about, the different things that you're doing inside of Warzone has been really interesting. And the one thing I wanted to call out that I found on your server that I thought was super helpful was your tutorial on how to make a map. And, having these people come to you, and maybe some people listening want to get started, say, I want to create my own legacy. I love maps. I want to make my own map. What is some advice that you could give them? Maybe something that isn't necessarily a beginner tip, but something that they aren't thinking about, that they will need to think about later on.
Well, the first thing I say to all the people that ask me is that it's very, very easy. When I say this, is that I always dreamt of making maps. I actually studied history, and I do historical research. And when I studied, I always made on paper, of course, maps that could help me out with my study. And so I'm totally I'm incapable of using computers. I had map modders on Warzone, but I can't code. I'm incapable. And so I am the demonstration that you can do it, because if I could, anyone can. And that's the point. It's so easy. You are going to be astonished by it. I understand that for a lot of people, it can be complicated because it's really time consuming. I know that because in Warzone, just drawing, it's easy. If you use Inkscape, which is the very easy to do, and actually it's what make people a bit afraid of doing their own maps. But actually, Inkscape is the easiest part. When you port the map onto the Warzone editor, that's where the time-consuming part comes in. Because the problem there is that you have to name things, create bonuses, and actually think about the structure of your map. But other than that, I think it's very satisfying to see your work comes to life and other people interacting with it. I am never against criticism on my maps, because they usually give me a lot of tips. Also because I don't think that my capabilities and my point of view is absolute, and I know I tend to be, how can I say, a bit exaggerating in how I make things. But the point is that anyone can make maps, good maps. And usually the simpler they are, the more appreciated they are. So what I really suggest people is just to try. And you don't need to be an expert. I never had used Inkscape in my life before starting the Star Wars map. So anyone can do it. The only thing is to accept the idea that you are going to spend some time on it. That's for everything.
Yeah.
And it will remain, and maybe people is going to use that as a starting point to make something else, which is not bad, I think.
No, I think, you're very inspiring to listen to. I think for, maybe a lot of players that just really enjoy playing on the maps. And, I think there's all maps in our minds that really stand out. And I think, your take on maps is very interesting. But not only that, but your participation in the community, I think, is a big part of it. What is it for you that keeps bringing you back to Warzone? I mean, it sounds like, obviously you got invited in by somebody outside, maybe somebody that's not even playing anymore, but what has kept you around in Warzone specifically?
Well, you actually said that because personally, I had a lot of trouble in organizing stuff in real life, like board games. Also, yeah, all this stuff, all this role play stuff is time consuming, and usually it's hell to organize something like that. I'm actually now in a Blood Bowl tournament with my friends, and it's hell. The organization is always hell because we have a lot of stuff to do. Also, being 34 years old, it's a different thing from, for example, being at the university,
Right.
which it's another thing. So for me, Warzone is just a medium to connect with people. And consider that I'm Italian and I'm speaking in English with you. But also I have contacts with all other Europeans. I have the other guy that made the VMB server with me is from New Zealand. And so this is, I think, the element of globalization that I really love, and that allows people to connect on all levels. It's not just to find people like you. To me, it's always the contrary. I want to find objections to my point of view. And so my involvement with the community is always to help out because I tend to do that naturally. But at the same time, I want confrontation because when people in some way deny my point of view, they are giving me something. Because I always think that we tend to put ourselves in a position of righteousness and maybe a bit of how can I say arrogance, and I want my arrogance to be in check. And so I like that people tells me, no, that's wrong because of that and that. And so that's what I appreciate most, and actually what I suggest people to do in general, to confront each other, which is something we are losing in this era of social media, I think, in general. That's it,
Right.
pretty much. So I
Yeah,
come to Warzone because it's easy to communicate. It's really
yeah.
strange as a thing to do, to
And
say, I
I
think.
think your point around, confrontation, right? I mean, we're literally playing a game primarily focused on war and being confrontational with one another. But in a way, it's interesting how this medium brings us together. And I really thank you for being on the podcast and for being a part of the conversation. Um, it's always so much fun talking to people like yourself. I agree. I think bringing people together around the globe to do something together is special, and something that when I was a kid, thinking about doing something like this, you would have, I would have never thought to do that. And
Me too.
Being here, having this conversation, and continuing to have more conversations in game and with other creators and players has been really special. So thanks for being a part of that. Is there anything else that you want to, promote or send people to, or shout outs before we wrap things up?
Yes, there's one thing that I think needs to be addressed in Warzone. It's just the giving the people the possibility to learn about all these collateral communities that are around Warzone. For example, there is a server which is made by the map makers, another which is made by those who made from the modders, and also there are Diplo servers. There's a lot of stuff around Warzone, which are kind of cool. And it's sad that people don't know them. That's the only part of it. Because I think that the participation would be much, much greater if we find a way to, in some, I don't know how, actually, we have been discussing this with other people, to, in some way, federate the whole community, just to let people communicate between the different specific communities, but at the same time to advertise these communities with the regular players. Because I know that I discovered this way after you contacted me after the Star Wars map.
Sure.
So, and since I am so eager to connect with people, and I had difficulty in finding out that there were all these communities on Discord, I think the average player, which is usually younger, would have even more difficulties. And so my hope is to give everybody the possibility to at least know that there is a lot of stuff going on the sidelines.
And I always try to when we finish up these podcasts, share those communities, and we will definitely look in the links underneath this interview. Everything that Coen and I connected on, and maybe even more that we didn't fully cover that you should check out, is below. The modding community, the map making community, the server that Coen is helping be a part of. We're going to have all of those links in this interview comment section. So please go and check those out. I think he's absolutely right that there is a ton of great communities, and some of it is just getting connected and finding the right people for what you do in Warzone. It's not always easy.
Make your dream come to life. That's the point.
Yeah, I agree. Well, awesome. Hey, thank you so much, Coen.
Thanks to you. For real, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll see you in the next episode of Search, Deploy, Commit. And thank you so much for listening. Take care, everybody.
Bye, everybody.